A billionaire cried. The poor girl who saved him gave him quadruple. The Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the dusky horizon. But James Musk barely noticed it from his corner office on the 87th floor of Musk Tower. 23 years had passed since that fateful night, yet the weight of his loss still pressed against his chest with the same crushing intensity. At 45, he had accumulated more wealth than most could dream of, yet the emptiness within him seemed to grow with each passing year. The newspapers called him the steel-hearted titan of Wall Street, but few knew the truth behind his stoic facade. Before he became the ruthless businessman worth billions, he had been simply James, a young man madly in love with his college sweetheart, Sarah. Their love story had been the stuff of romance novels, the ambitious business major falling for the free-spirited art student who painted murals in community centers. Every morning, as his private elevator ascended to his office, James would unconsciously touch the platinum wedding band he still wore, a habit he couldn't break, much like his heart couldn't forget. Sarah had been his compass, his reason for pushing harder, dreaming bigger. They had married young, just after graduation, with nothing but student loans and grand dreams to their names. She had believed in him when he started his first tech company in their tiny studio apartment, working late into the night while she brought him coffee and sketched designs for their future home. The memories of that rainy October night still haunted his dreams. Sarah had been driving back from her art gallery's opening night, her first solo exhibition. She had called him, voice bubbling with excitement about the sales she'd made. "We're celebrating tonight, James. I'm bringing your favorite chocolate cake." Those were the last words he would ever hear from her. A drunk driver ran a red light, and in an instant his world shattered like the windshield of her small blue Honda. The police found her sketchbook in the wreckage, its pages soaked but still intact. The last drawing was of them together, surrounded by the family they had planned to have. 3 children, a dog, and a house with a garden where she would paint while he taught their kids about business. That sketchbook now lay in a custom-built glass case in his private study, a testament to dreams that would never materialize. In the years that followed, James had thrown himself into his work with a fervor that bordered on obsession. Every successful merger, every acquisition, every billion added to his net worth was both a tribute to Sarah's belief in him and an attempt to fill the void she left behind. He built schools, hospitals, and art galleries in her name, but nothing could rebuild his broken heart. His empire grew exponentially. Technology, real estate, clean energy, and artificial intelligence. Musk Industries became a global powerhouse, and James earned a reputation for being brilliantly ruthless in business, but surprisingly generous in philanthropy. The Sarah Musk Foundation provided art scholarships to underprivileged students, fulfilling her dream of making art accessible to everyone. The young executives who worked for him whispered about his peculiarities, how he never attended company social functions, how he spent holidays working in his office, how he would sometimes stand by his floor-to-ceiling windows for hours, staring at nothing in particular. His sister Eleanor had tried setting him up with countless women over the years, successful entrepreneurs, elegant socialites, brilliant academics, but James remained unmoved. "Lightning doesn't strike twice," he would say, ending all discussions about his personal life. His daily routine had become as predictable as the sunrise. He arrived at the office before anyone else, reviewed global market reports over black coffee, attended board meetings where his word was law, and worked until the city lights below blurred into a meaningless glow. His personal assistant, Thompson, had been with him for 15 years and knew better than to schedule anything after 7 p.m. That was when James would retreat to his private gym, punishing his body on the treadmill as if trying to outrun his memories. The only time anyone saw a glimpse of the man he used to be was during his annual visit to the children's hospital ward, funded by his foundation. There, surrounded by young patients who knew nothing of his wealth or status, He would smile, tell stories, and for brief moments his eyes would light up with something that resembled joy. He always brought art supplies, remembering how Sarah believed in art's healing power. As he approached his 45th birthday, the board of directors began dropping hints about succession planning. James ignored them all. The thought of legacy meant little to him. After all, who would he leave it all to? His massive penthouse felt more like a museum than a home, filled with the world's finest art pieces, but devoid of the warmth that Sarah had once promised to fill it with. On particularly difficult nights, he would visit the small art studio he had maintained exactly as Sarah had left it, her unfinished canvas still on the easel, waiting for brushstrokes that would never come. Her art supplies remained untouched, gathering dust, a shrine to interrupted dreams and unfinished masterpieces. In these moments, surrounded by her essence, he would allow himself to wonder about the life they should have had. Little did James know that fate had finally decided 23 years of winter was enough. Spring was about to arrive in his life in the most unexpected form, a young woman whose spirit would remind him that even the most frozen heart could thaw, and that sometimes love stories don't end with goodbye, but with a new beginning. As the sun set on another lonely evening in his empire of steel and glass, James couldn't have known that tomorrow would bring a change that would shake the very foundation of his carefully constructed solitude. Sometimes, life's greatest gifts come disguised as ordinary moments, and healing arrives when we least expect it, in ways we never imagined. The Unexpected Angel. The morning Theodora Justin stepped into Musk Tower's gleaming lobby, the security guards noticed something different about her. Unlike the usual parade of polished executives and nervous interviewees, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed to light up the space around her. Her simple navy blue suit might not have been designer-made, but her dignity made it look like haute couture. At 19, Theodora was younger than most applicants for the executive secretary position, but her resume told a story of remarkable determination. Graduating high school at 16, putting herself through business school with scholarships and part-time jobs, all while helping raise her younger siblings after their mother's illness. She had packed more life experience into her 19 years than many acquired in decades. The Human Resources Department had initially hesitated to forward her application to James's office. Too young, they said. Too inexperienced. But Thompson, James's longtime personal assistant who was preparing for retirement, saw something in her application letter that made him pause. Between the lines of perfect grammar and professional language, he sensed a spirit that reminded him of Sarah. That same combination of practical capability and artistic soul. The interview process was grueling. Theodora faced 6 rounds of increasingly challenging scenarios, handling each with a combination of quick thinking and genuine warmth that set her apart. When she finally reached the final interview with James himself, the other candidates, all with decade-long corporate experience, watched with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. James had been in a particularly dark mood that day, having just passed what would have been his and Sarah's 24th wedding anniversary. He barely glanced up from his papers when Theodora entered, expecting another rehearsed presentation about corporate efficiency and professional excellence. But Theodora did something unexpected. She waited in silence until he looked up. When their eyes met, James was struck by the quiet strength in her gaze. No nervous chatter, no desperate attempt to fill the silence, just patience and an unwavering presence that somehow made his massive office feel less empty. When she finally spoke, her words were simple but profound. "Mr. Musk, before we discuss my qualifications, I'd like to know what you need. Not as a CEO, but as a person who spends 14 hours a day in this office." The question caught him off guard. For the first time in years, someone had seen past the billionaire facade to the human beneath. The interview turned into a 3-hour conversation that ranged from business philosophy to art. Theodora, it turned out, taught art to underprivileged children on weekends, from global economics to the importance of human connection in an increasingly digital world. Thompson, watching through the glass walls, saw something he hadn't witnessed in decades. James Musk actually smiled. Not the practiced smile he wore for business photographs, but a genuine expression that reached his eyes. When Theodora left the office that evening, the building seemed a little warmer, as if her presence had thawed something frozen in its steel and glass bones. Her integration into the company was seamless, yet transformative. She brought an unprecedented level of organization to James's chaotic schedule, but more importantly, she brought humanity. Simple things changed. Fresh flowers appeared in the office every Monday. She grew them herself. Meetings were scheduled with buffer time for actual human interaction, and somehow the intimidating atmosphere of the executive floor began to soften. Theodora's desk outside James's office became a kind of oasis in the corporate desert. She knew everyone's names, remembered their stories, and had an uncanny ability to diffuse tense situations with just the right word or gesture. Even James's most challenging business partners found themselves warming to her authentic charm. But it wasn't just her professional capabilities that began to affect change. Theodora had a way of gently challenging James's self-imposed isolation. When she discovered he hadn't taken a lunch break in years, she started ordering 2 portions, casually mentioning that food tastes better with company. When she learned about his art collection, she asked thoughtful questions that made him see the pieces through fresh eyes. The other employees watched this gradual transformation with fascination. The man known as the steel-hearted Titan was beginning to show signs of thaw. He started leaving the office before midnight, occasionally joined staff gatherings, and even agreed to attend the company's annual charity gala, something he hadn't done in 20 years. A moment of crisis. It happened on a quiet Thursday evening, as the autumn sun was setting behind the Manhattan skyline. The office had emptied early for a company-wide training event, one that James had characteristically opted to skip. Theodora had stayed behind to finish quarterly reports, her desk lamp a lone beacon in the gathering dusk. The first sign that something was wrong was so subtle she almost missed it. A sharp intake of breath from James's office, followed by an unusual silence. Theodora had grown attuned to the rhythm of his workday, the steady typing, occasional phone calls, even his footsteps as he paced during difficult decisions. This silence was wrong. When she looked up from her computer, she saw James standing by his window, one hand pressed against the glass, the other clutching his chest. The usual commanding presence that filled the room had crumpled, his face ashen in the fading light. Without hesitation, Theodora was on her feet, her heart pounding but her mind crystal clear. The next few minutes moved in slow motion, yet felt like a race against time. She reached him just as his knees buckled, managing to guide his fall so he didn't hit his head. Her fingers found his pulse, irregular and weak. James tried to speak, but she gently shushed him, already pulling out her phone with her free hand. Her voice remained steady as she spoke to the emergency dispatcher, providing precise details about their location and James's symptoms. Years of caring for her mother during her illness had taught Theodora the value of calm in a crisis. She loosened his tie, positioned him properly, and began timing his pulse while keeping him conscious through gentle conversation. "Stay with me, Mr. Musk," she said softly, her hand holding his with firm reassurance. "Tell me about your favorite painting in the gallery." It was a deliberate choice. She had noticed how art always seemed to energize him. Through labored breaths, he began describing a small watercolor, one she knew wasn't the most valuable piece he owned, but held special meaning. The paramedics arrived in record time. Theodora had already arranged for security to hold an elevator and clear the path. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, James grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Don't leave," he whispered, and in that moment, both of them recognized something had fundamentally shifted between them. The ride to the hospital was a blur of medical terminology and sirens. Theodora never left his side, providing medical history to the paramedics with an accuracy that surprised even James. She had memorized everything: his medications, allergies, previous surgeries, information that proved crucial in the emergency room. Later, the doctors would confirm what they both already knew: she had saved his life. 5 more minutes without medical attention, they said, shaking their heads in amazement at his recovery. A blocked artery had nearly ended the story of James Musk, but fate, in the form of a 19-year-old secretary, had other plans. In the quiet of the hospital room, as machines beeped steadily and the city lights twinkled beyond the window, James watched Theodora organizing his care with the hospital staff, handling concerned board members' calls, and still finding time to ensure he was comfortable. She had transformed from efficient secretary to guardian angel without missing a beat. It was more than her quick thinking or practical efficiency that struck him. It was the genuine concern in her eyes, the gentle way she adjusted his pillows, the fact that she somehow knew exactly what he needed before he could ask. For the first time in 23 years, James Musk felt something shift in his carefully walled-off heart. As he drifted in and out of sleep that first night in the hospital, he remembered Sarah's last words about celebrating. Perhaps, he thought, as he watched Theodora quietly working on her laptop in the corner of his room, life was offering him something to celebrate again. Not a replacement for what he had lost, but a different kind of miracle, one that had arrived in its own perfect time. Love blooms anew. The hospital stay became a turning point in their relationship, though neither spoke of it at first. James returned to work with a new perspective, one where the glass walls of his office no longer felt like barriers, but windows to a world he had forgotten existed. He noticed things he'd been blind to before: the way Theodora hummed softly while organizing files, how her presence made even the most sterile boardroom feel warmer, the gentle grace with which she handled everyone from janitors to CEOs. During his recovery, their traditional roles began to blur. Late nights at the office transformed into long conversations about art, life, and dreams. James found himself sharing stories about Sarah for the first time in decades, and Theodora listened with a compassion that held no judgment, no comparison, only understanding. She shared her own stories of growing up in a struggling family, of teaching art to children in homeless shelters, of believing in the power of kindness to change lives. The change in James was noticed by everyone. Board members whispered about how he actually smiled during meetings now. His infamous temper during negotiations mellowed into a strategic patience. Even his dress code softened. The occasional colored tie appeared, breaking his decades-long uniform of black and gray. Thompson, now semi-retired, but still watching over his former boss, recognized the signs of a heart awakening from its long winter. Their first unofficial date happened accidentally. A late-night review of acquisition proposals turned into a casual dinner when Theodora mentioned never having tried authentic Italian cuisine. James found himself sharing stories of his college days in Rome, and before he knew it, they were in his private car heading to a small, family-owned restaurant in Little Italy. The owner, an old friend, did a double-take. James Musk hadn't visited in 23 years. Watching Theodora experience her first taste of real carbonara, her eyes lighting up with joy, James felt something he thought had died with Sarah: the desire to share life's simple pleasures with someone. She didn't hide her humble background or try to pretend sophistication she didn't have. Instead, she approached everything with genuine curiosity and appreciation that made each moment feel new. Their age difference worried him initially, but Theodora's old soul and his young heart seemed to meet somewhere in the middle. She challenged his cynicism with her hopeful perspective, while he shared wisdom earned through years of triumph and tragedy. Together, they created a balance that felt both unlikely and inevitable. The turning point came during a charity gala for the Sarah Musk Foundation. Theodora had helped organize it, adding interactive art stations where underprivileged children could create alongside professional artists. Watching her guide a small girl through her first painting, James realized he had fallen in love again, not despite his past, but because his heart had grown large enough to honor both his first love and this new miracle. A bold declaration. The morning James decided to declare his love, the city was bathed in spring sunshine. He had spent weeks planning, considering grand gestures and elaborate scenarios, but in the end, truth demanded simplicity. He called an all-staff meeting in the company's main auditorium, something he had never done before. 300 employees watched in stunned silence as their CEO, known for his emotional restraint, walked onto the stage looking more nervous than during any billion-dollar deal. Theodora sat in the front row, confusion clear on her face, especially when James asked her to join him on stage. 23 years ago, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room, I thought I understood everything about love and loss. I built walls around my heart and called it wisdom. I accumulated wealth and called it success. But true wisdom, I've learned, is knowing when to let those walls fall. The atmosphere in the auditorium was electric as James turned to face Theodora. You didn't try to replace what I lost. You showed me that my heart had room to grow. You never asked for anything except the chance to do your job well, but you gave me back something I thought was gone forever. Hope. Tears were flowing freely among the staff as James took Theodora's hands in his. I'm not offering you my wealth. I know you don't want it. I'm offering you my heart, scarred but healing, and hoping you'll consider sharing your life with mine. The silence that followed was profound. Theodora's response, when it came, echoed her very first words to him. I never saw the billionaire, she said softly. I only saw a man who needed to remember how to live. Their kiss was met with a standing ovation that seemed to shake the building's foundation. The news exploded across social media and business networks. Steel-hearted titan melts, read the headlines. Critics cited their age difference. Cynics questioned Theodora's motives. But those who knew them saw only the authentic love that had transformed both their lives. A miracle times 4. The wedding was an intimate affair, held in the rooftop garden of Musk Tower. Theodora wore a simple white dress and carried a bouquet of wildflowers grown in her community garden project. James had Sarah's favorite flowers woven into an arch, under which they exchanged vows, acknowledging that love doesn't divide when it multiplies. Their first year of marriage was a journey of discovery. Theodora moved into the penthouse, but immediately began making changes, adding color, texture, and life to the museum-like space. James found himself enjoying simple pleasures. Weekend painting lessons with his wife, visits to small art galleries, quiet evenings watching the sunset from their terrace. The news of Theodora's pregnancy came as a surprise to both of them. The first ultrasound appointment became an emotional watershed when the doctor kept counting 1, 2, 3, and finally 4 distinct heartbeats. James, the man known for his composure in trillion-dollar negotiations, fainted dead away. The pregnancy became a city-wide celebration. Theodora's determination to continue working as long as possible despite her growing size earned her even more respect from the staff. James transformed into an endearingly overprotective husband, installing medical equipment in the penthouse and hiring the city's top specialists. The day the quadruplets arrived, Musk Tower's lights spelled out life across its facade. 2 boys and 2 girls, each perfect in their own way. James cut each cord himself, tears streaming down his face as he welcomed Alexander, Sarah, Theodore, and Luna into the world. The babies were a beautiful blend of their parents' café au lait skin, their mother's curls, their father's sharp features. As he held all 4 babies, somehow managing to fit them in his arms, James remembered Sarah's sketch of the family they had planned. Life had given him a different family, but one just as precious. Theodora watched from her hospital bed, exhausted but radiant, knowing that their love story was just beginning. News of the quadruplets' birth made international headlines, but what caught the media's attention wasn't just the unusual circumstance, it was the transformation of James Musk from corporate titan to doting father. Security cameras caught him singing lullabies in his office between meetings, and board members grew accustomed to conducting million-dollar negotiations while their CEO cradled a sleeping infant. The nursery became the heart of their home, decorated with murals that Theodora painted during her pregnancy. Each baby had their own personality. Alexander, the thoughtful observer; Sarah, the determined leader; Theodore, the peaceful mediator; and Luna, the creative spirit. Together, they filled the once quiet penthouse with the chaos and joy of new life. A legacy of love. The announcement of the $50 million fund came during the quadruplets' first birthday celebration, but it wasn't just another charitable donation. James and Theodora had spent months crafting a comprehensive program that would revolutionize support for struggling mothers and families. The Hearts United Foundation became their shared vision of turning personal joy into universal hope. The foundation's headquarters occupied the entire 50th floor of Musk Tower, its walls adorned with children's artwork and success stories. Theodora insisted on an open-door policy, allowing any mother in need to walk in and receive immediate assistance. The space included a fully equipped daycare center, medical clinic, and educational facilities, a one-stop sanctuary for families in crisis. Their approach to philanthropy broke traditional molds. Instead of simply writing checks, they created sustainable support systems. The foundation established partnerships with hospitals, schools, and businesses, creating a network that addressed not just immediate needs, but long-term stability. Mothers received medical care, job training, childcare, and most importantly, dignity. James often found himself thinking about Sarah as he watched Theodora mentor young mothers. She would have loved this, he thought. The way art therapy classes helped traumatized children heal, how financial literacy programs empowered women to build independent futures. The foundation became a living testament to both his past and present love stories. The impact rippled across society. Other corporations, inspired by the Musk model, began establishing similar programs. The foundation's success stories became legendary. The homeless mother who became a pediatric nurse, the refugee who started a successful catering business, the teenage mom who earned her way to medical school. Each success strengthened James and Theodora's commitment to their mission. Their own children became regular fixtures at the foundation, learning compassion and social responsibility from an early age. Alexander showed a talent for organizing youth programs. Sarah demonstrated her mother's gift for connecting with troubled children. Theodore developed innovative fundraising ideas, and Luna's art brightened every corner of the building. The foundation's most innovative feature was its Circle of Support program, where successful beneficiaries returned as mentors for new mothers. This created a self-sustaining community of strength and hope. Theodora's philosophy that healed people heal people became the cornerstone of their approach to charitable giving. As the foundation grew, so did its influence on public policy. James used his business acumen and connections to advocate for legislative changes supporting maternal health and child welfare. Theodora's grassroots understanding of community needs helped shape programs that worked in the real world, not just on paper. Full Circle, a symphony of love's triumph. 20 years after Theodora first walked into Musk Tower, the city skyline had changed, but the view from James's office remained his favorite perspective. Now in his mid-60s, his hair had turned silver, but his eyes held a vitality that made him appear younger than when Theodora first met him. At his desk sat a photograph that captured their journey, himself, Theodora, their 4 teenage children, and surrounding them, hundreds of mothers and children whose lives they'd transformed. The quadruplets had grown into remarkable young adults, each carrying forward their parents' legacy in unique ways. Alexander headed the Foundation's international expansion. Sarah pioneered innovative educational programs, Theodore managed sustainable investment initiatives, and Luna's art therapy programs had become a model for trauma recovery centers worldwide. Theodora, now in her late 30s, had maintained her simple grace while becoming one of the most influential voices in global philanthropy. Her approach to combining business efficiency with genuine compassion revolutionized how corporate charity operated. Yet she still grew her own flowers and taught art to children on weekends, remaining true to her essence. Their love story had become urban legend, but the reality was far richer than any headline could capture. Every evening, they still shared quiet moments on their penthouse terrace, discussing their day, planning new projects, or simply enjoying comfortable silence. Their age difference had become meaningless. They had grown together, shaped by shared purpose and deepening love. The Sarah Musk wing of the city's largest hospital stood as a bridge between past and present. Within its walls, a special gallery displayed Sarah's restored sketchbook alongside photographs of the thousands of families helped by the foundation. It was Theodora's idea, a way to honor the love that had shaped James into the man she fell in love with. On their 20th anniversary, James surprised Theodora by gathering every family the foundation had ever helped for a celebration in Central Park. Thousands came, each with a story of transformation. As they stood together watching their 4 children mingle with the crowd, James leaned down to whisper in his wife's ear, "You didn't just save my life that day in the office, you taught me how to live again." The story of James and Theodora Musk transcended romance. It became a testament to love's power to heal, transform, and multiply. Their billions had built buildings, but their love had built bridges between hearts. The steel-hearted titan had not only learned to love again, but had created a legacy of love that would ripple through generations. In the end, their greatest achievement wasn't measured in dollars or buildings named in their honor. It was measured in the laughter of children who would never know hunger, in the confidence of mothers who could finally dream of a better future, and in the way they had proven that love, when given the chance, could transform not just 2 lives, but an entire society. As the sun set on another day of purpose and love, James and Theodora stood in their garden, surrounded by the blooms she still tended herself. Their 4 children were hosting a foundation event downstairs, their voices drifting up through the evening air. James held his wife close, marveling at how life's greatest gifts often come disguised as ordinary moments. "Do you ever regret choosing an old broken billionaire?" he asked, a hint of their old teasing in his voice. Theodora smiled, touching the silver at his temples. "I never. I chose a billionaire," she replied, echoing her words from decades ago. "I chose a man who needed to remember how to love, and look what that love has created." Below them, the city pulsed with life, countless stories unfolding in its streets. But up here, In their sanctuary of peace and purpose, they had written a story that would inspire generations. A tale of second chances, of love's healing power, and of the extraordinary things that happen when two hearts dare to believe in miracles. And so their story continued, not as an ending, but as an eternal beginning, proving that true love doesn't just change lives. It creates an endless ripple of hope, healing, and possibility that touches all it encounters. In the grand tapestry of life, James and Theodora had woven a pattern of love that would continue to inspire and transform lives long after their own story became legend. For in the end, what they had built was more than a foundation, more than a family, more than an empire. They had built a testament to love's endless capacity to heal, grow, and transform not just hearts, but the entire world. And in that achievement lay the truest meaning of happily ever after.